President Donald Trump said he's not joking about seeking an unconstitutional third term. That's where we're starting the 7 from the Washington Post. I'm Hannah Jewell. It's Monday, March 31st. Let's get you caught up with today's 7 stories. Yesterday, the president called NBC News' Kristen Welker. The call wasn't broadcast, but NBC released a full transcript. In the call, Trump declined to rule out the possibility that he would seek a third presidential term. As fans of the U.S. Constitution know, that's explicitly barred under the 22nd Amendment. But Trump suggested on the call that multiple plans have begun to circulate in Trump world for how he could do it anyway. He mentioned one hypothetical plan in which Vice President J.D. Vance would run in 2028 and then pass the baton. When floating the idea of a third term, Trump has pointed to unspecified polling as an indicator of his popularity. But several recent actual polls have found that Americans are unhappy with many of Trump's actions since returning to office. And Trump would be 82 years old at the next presidential election in 2028. Number 2.
Let me first hand out 2 $1 million checks in appreciation.
Elon Musk handed out $1 million checks to 2 Wisconsin voters. There's a very important election tomorrow in Wisconsin. It's to fill a seat on the state's Supreme Court, and it will determine whether that court retains its liberal majority. That could affect the future of abortion, voter ID laws, union rights, and other issues in Wisconsin. The race has attracted national attention. It's Trump's first major test with swing state voters since he won his second presidential term in November. And that means it's also drawn an astonishing amount of money. More than $90 million has been spent on the race, making it the most expensive judicial battle in U.S. history. Some $20 million of that has come from Trump's billionaire ally Elon Musk and groups linked to him. Yesterday, Musk handed out $1 million checks to 2 voters. The state's Democratic Attorney General contended that Musk was violating an anti-bribery law. But Musk said he was just trying to boost turnout in the election.
The reason for the checks is that it's really just to get attention. It's like we need to get attention, and it's somewhat inevitably when I do these things, the sort of it causes the legacy media to kind of lose their minds.
Musk's gambit is similar to one he pursued in last year's presidential election. He spent at least $288 million to help Trump get elected, including by handing out checks to swing state voters. Number 3. The death toll in the Myanmar earthquake rose to more than 1,600 people. On Friday, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake hit the Southeast Asian country. It shook buildings hundreds of miles away from the epicenter. The scale of the devastation came into focus over the weekend. The country's ruling military junta said that more than 3,400 people have been injured, and many more are still missing, so the final death toll is expected to be much higher. International aid is trickling into the isolated country, but concerns remain over the junta's willingness to allow humanitarian groups to operate freely. Myanmar's military leaders are fighting a civil war against pro-democracy and ethnic rebels. Number 4. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been displaced in the West Bank. An Israeli military operation that began in January has led to the biggest displacement of Palestinians in the West Bank since Israel occupied it in 1967. The military has torn up roads, demolished hundreds of homes, and prevented residents from returning. And humanitarian groups are struggling to respond to the crisis. They've been hamstrung by Israeli restrictions and funding challenges. Meanwhile, in the U.S., a century-old militant Zionist group called Betar said it shared a list of pro-Palestinian activists with the Trump administration. The group wants the people on that list to be arrested, and some already have. In recent weeks, legal immigrants to the U.S. who have been tied to pro-Palestinian advocacy have been detained for deportation. The health risks from air pollution could be worse than previously thought. That's our fifth story. Traditionally, environmental regulators have assessed the risks of chemical exposure one at a time. But a new study suggests that approach has led to underestimates of the total health risks faced by vulnerable populations. Specifically, people in communities near heavy industry are breathing in a mix of dozens of pollutants. And studying their combined impact reveals previously overlooked health impacts. The study comes as President Trump is moving to dismantle dozens of environmental rules that were set during the Biden administration. Number 6. The actor Richard Chamberlain died at the age of 90. Chamberlain was known as the king of the miniseries. He'll be remembered as the sandy-haired TV heartthrob who starred on the popular 1960s medical drama Dr. Kildare.
At the risk of seeming facetious, I'd like to remind you, Doctor, that I have only 2 arms and 2 legs.
On my service, an insufficient number of appendages is no excuse.
Dr. Laughlin, I can't...
Dr. Kildare.
In the 1980s, he was known for his leading roles in hit shows including Shogun and The Thornbirds. Those were 2 of the most watched miniseries of all time. Chamberlain died on Saturday in Hawaii. His publicist said the cause was complications from a stroke. Number 7 is a March Madness update. The men's Final Four is set, with 4 number 1 seeds. This is the first time this has happened since 2008. And it's only the second time it's happened since the NCAA tournament expanded to 64 teams in 1985. The Final Four will play on Saturday in San Antonio, starting with Auburn versus Florida at 6:09 p.m. Eastern. Then, after that, Duke will duke it out with Houston. Then, the championship game will be played next Monday. We could also get 4 number 1 seeds in the women's Final Four. UCLA and defending champions South Carolina are already in. Fellow top seeds Texas and USC play tonight. So perhaps the lesson of this year's March Madness is to keep your bracket as boring and predictable as possible. All right, you're all caught up. This weekend, did you spend $40 on something you don't really need? A couple of disappointing cocktails, perhaps? A jacket that you can't really pull off? If so, let me tell you about a deal you won't regret. Right now, you can get a year's digital subscription to the Washington Post for, that's right, $40. A subscription is the best way to keep yourself informed with accurate reporting. It's also the best way you can support Post journalists and the work we do here on the podcast. Head over to WashingtonPost.com/subscribe. I'm Hannah Jewell. I'll meet you back here tomorrow.